Welcome to another edition of In the Weeds with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Riverwind Casino. Riverwind is Oklahoma City's premier casino experience, and there are so many reasons why Riverwind is consistently voted OKC's number one casino, but it all starts with their amazing variety of gaming thrills and excitement. Riverwind's beautiful, award-winning environment plays host to more than 2,800 of the latest electronic games, with a huge selection of table games, including blackjack match roulette, and Teddy's favorite, craps. No matter what your game, Riverwind has it in spades and hearts. And to learn more about their gaming promotions and entertainment options, all you got to do is visit riverwind.com. Riverwind Casino, good times, great rewards. Well, the Alabama Crimson Tide is coming to town this week, and there was one man I knew we needed to talk to, and that man is Greg McElroy. What's going on, dude? Long time no see.
Been a while. Y'all doing all right?
Well,
Uh,
relatively.
I hear you guys all the time. Like I'll be in the car or whatever, driving back from a game, and I'll hear you guys. You guys do a great job on the show, man, with Toby, and it's a good list. Sometimes with some of these, sometimes they're just way too homer. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, I know. Like I go back and I listen to the show, I listen to the game, and then I watch back the tape. I'm like, hang on a second, that's not. Wait, what? But I think you guys do a really good job, man. So I'm glad to be with y'all.
Good. I mean, it's sometimes whenever you play as bad as we have at times, there's nothing else you could do but but call it how it is.
I I want to start with the OU Bama game, and I know that you watched the tape. I know that you've kept tabs on Oklahoma. Just how do you think we fix this thing in Norman, Greg? Like, what do you think are the main things that need to be addressed for Oklahoma football to get back to where we expect it to be?
Um, I always kind of look at, and obviously knowing Oklahoma really well, I always look at, all right, what are the best versions of Oklahoma? What did they have? And I don't care about the eras that much. To me, the game is still the game. And I feel like Oklahoma has been to the mountaintop. It can absolutely get back, but they're missing this from what some of their best teams did. The most obvious thing this year is offensive line play. It's awful. I mean, I don't really know how else to describe it. And it's Oklahoma's standards that they're being held to. I'm not holding to the standards of Tulsa or holding to the standards of Colorado State or Texas Tech. I'm holding them to the Oklahoma's offensive line standards. And I don't feel like this group is anywhere near where they need to be or where they have been in the past, especially when looking at some of the best Oklahoma teams. That's one. Two, quarterback play. I don't feel like the quarterback play has been very good or reliable all year. Um, who does that fall on? Uh, I personally think that Seth Luttrell was a bit of a scapegoat. I think it's hard to call plays when you can't catch and you can't uncover at wide receiver, and your quarterback seeing ghosts and you can't block. So, was it on him? I don't think it was, but I seem to be in the minority there. And then as far as what I've seen from them defensively, they've been fine. I mean, their defense has been fine, but at some point, the dam breaks against them regularly. So, and I don't blame them. I mean, the offense is just not giving them enough. So, I think they can absolutely get back, but the offensive line, I think, is paramount to get improved, and then followed by quarterback, and then unfortunately staying healthy.
Yeah. With Jackson Arnold, just to tap into that a little bit more, as a quarterback, you played the position at a really high level. It has not been a good environment for a young player to improve. I mean, all young guys are going to go out and make mistakes, and hopefully learn from those and improve. But as you pointed out, the offensive line, when you lose that trust and the clock is all screwed up in your head and blitz is coming and you don't think that they're going to pick it up, and injury at wide receiver, I guess what I'm saying is it can be hard, but how much of it is actual flaw in talent and the player, and how much of it is the environment that he's kind of been forced to play in? And can he get the confidence back? Because clearly he's missing it right now.
Yeah, I think that it's a great question and it's a combination of things. One thing you can't do is play quarterback by yourself. It doesn't matter how good you are. I don't care. And honestly, like, I don't care if you're as talented as Caleb Williams. You still can't do it on your own, even though he often tries. Um, I look at where Jackson is, and I think you don't become a top caliber prospect. You don't become a 5-star guy universally across the board, win at Elite 11, go to Elite 11, even playing field against all the other best quarterbacks in the country and still stand out. You don't do all those things and then play high level football in Dallas, Texas, where I'm from. And I know the caliber of high school talent and the caliber of high school coaching in Dallas to me is unlike that of any other city in America. Outside of, maybe Houston and a handful of other places. But I just think it's between the ears with him. It started last year when he played against Arizona, had a heavily, scrutinized game with the interceptions. And then it carried over into the spring, couldn't really flush that. It was a turnover guy, at least throughout spring, based on what I've come to understand. That kind of carried over into summer, and then that carried over into fall, and he just never could shake the interception aspect of it. And then you start to become a little hesitant to cut it loose, and then you feel like you got to make something happen because you're that 5-star guy, you're the highly compensated guy that they chose in lieu of Dylan Gabriel, and now it's all the expectations in the world, and yet what's the biggest piece of adversity that Jackson Arnold has ever faced? When you're the best player in high school, you're just the best player. I mean, when you're in college, you're among many great players. Whether you're a 5-star, 3-star, 2-star, 0-star, 10-star, it doesn't matter. So I think it's between the ears, and I think he's struggling to see the field. I think the game's moving super fast for him. And let's be real, the offensive line, I wouldn't feel real confident standing behind that offensive line. If you look at his numbers when he gets clean protection, he's been all right. But if you look at his numbers when the protection is substandard, it's not great.
So the big thing around Norman right now is who's going to be the next offensive coordinator, Greg. And I'm not asking you, hey, who should we hire? Who would you hire? But right now you're seeing all kinds of different systems going and calling games. What do you think would be the best route from a system standpoint for OU to go with this next coordinator hire?
Yeah, it's a great question. I hear all the same buzz that y'all hear, and the pie in the sky ideal that it should be Dan Mullen or whatever. I don't think Dan Mullen's going to go call plays, but maybe he will. I'd be surprised. So I look at some of the systems that make the most sense. Do I think you can run traditional air raid in the SEC? No. So I think you have to have some variation if you want to go down the Lebby, Heupel, Baylor style of attack. That there's a place for that, but I don't. I think that the cat's kind of out of the bag there. Like, you better have an elite quarterback, you better have elite weapons. So. Who's the next guy that to me is coming up? Like, you hear the name Ben Arbuckle at Washington State, really good coach, but cut from the cloth of a traditional air raid guy. A guy that I've studied some this year that I think does a really good job. There's two guys. One, his name's Drew Cronick. He's at Navy, and I'm not suggesting that we watch Oklahoma evolve into a triple option attack. If you watch Navy, they're very much a group that has expanded beyond the triple option. They have triple option in their bag, but it's simply one trick in a bag of about 20 different tricks. So Drew Cronick's a guy that I've really been intrigued by this year, and has done more with less. And I'm not saying he should get the OU job, but he's a guy that I would strongly consider. And then another guy that I've been very impressed with how he's kind of built his system. He's at Pitt, and his name's Cade Bell, and I don't know if Cade Bell right now is in a position to go and make a move. And I know that they've lost 3 in a row at Pitt, but I think he's really good. I think he's got good stuff. They got good RPOs. I think there's probably a couple more steps that he needs to take from a protection standpoint. He's still young and has come from the FCS level at Western Carolina. This is his first year in Power 5 football. He's done an adequate job, but there have been times where I think he's left his offensive line out to dry a little bit without giving them the necessary help. And as Oklahoma fans know, that's probably not the best way to go, but I think that's something he will learn in time. So those are two guys that have stood out to me. I think Oklahoma has to do things a little differently. I don't know if they can just recruit to the Texas model of we'll go get the biggest, strongest, fastest, highest profile prospects, because I don't think their pockets are going to be as deep as Texas or as an Ohio State. So they're going to have to be a little bit more creative offensively, but there's plenty of guys out there that are moving the needle from a creativity standpoint.
Well, we got Alabama coming to town, which is, we've got a lot of things happening right now with how we've played, trying to keep a recruiting class together, an offensive coordinator hire, and we're still trying to become bowl eligible. And Alabama's coming to town, and it looks like they've gotten it together. What have you seen that's maybe a little bit different with how Alabama's playing now, with maybe early in the season when they're still transitioning into that DeBoer system?
Well, I think that when you look at Alabama, it was a little bit of a process of trial and error. Now, I called one of their games. It was against Tennessee, and you could sense that they kind of wanted to be a throw it team. You know, they wanted to evolve into a drop back passing team because I think they probably thought long term that would be more beneficial to the team's growth, because they've already established the ability to run the quarterback. We know that they have that in their arsenal of tricks. But if you can develop Milroe as a passer, then this offense could become very versatile and very difficult to defend. Well, after the Tennessee game, they kind of went back to the drawing board and said, yeah, this is just not. He missed too many throws. His feet aren't talking to him. Like, we're going to have to run first with him and then complement the quarterback run with the passing attack. And I think they've been quite good. Now, in the last 2 years with Jalen Milroe under center, it's been a big play offense. It's almost exclusively kind of what they have been at times this year, where they get too focused on the downfield throws, too focused on creating big plays. They average 9 yards an attempt. They throw the ball downfield with great regularity. But I think what this offense has kind of found is that if they don't run the ball, they will not be successful. If you look at their 3 games in which they were underwhelming offensively, I would say it was against Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Tennessee. All 3 games were really ineffective running the football. Now, Vanderbilt, they were ineffective because of circumstance. They were behind by 2 scores most of the game because their first offensive possession resulted in a pick 6. So they were playing catch up the whole game. But against South Carolina, I think they could have committed to the run. And against Tennessee, they did for a minute there in the second half, and then they seemingly got away from it. So I think they know now that it's about running the football, establishing the line of scrimmage, leaning into their quarterback's legs, leaning into their offensive line, and that's going to be the path of least resistance for them as they move forward.
Looking at this game in particular, I have to assume with the way that OU's offense has struggled this season, that Kalen DeBoer and this staff, they're not going to feel the need to take a bunch of risks offensively. Do you think this could be more of a conservative approach from Alabama in this game?
I don't know. I just don't know how you don't have that approach. Because right now, I mean, with what Alabama is now doing defensively, as far as creating issues for the quarterback and turning over other teams, like, they're doing a great job in creating some confusion in the backfield. Their disguises have gotten tighter. I think that they are doing a better job of making it look like zone, but actually playing man, and vice versa. Like that's been helpful. Early in the season, I felt like it was much easier to get a beat on what type of protection or what type of coverage they were in. And I also think pressure has ramped up. The amount of blitzing has ramped up as well. So I think with what they're doing on defense right now, I am not confident. I don't know about y'all. I'm not confident in Oklahoma being able to consistently move the football. So if I'm them, I'm playing bend don't break defense. Nothing gets behind me. Can't under any circumstances allow long runs in the run game or long quarterback runs. Big plays are a killer. You can't allow one-on-ones. So basically, picket fence defense, keep everything in front, rally up, make the plays, and then offensively pound away. I mean, just pound, 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 pound. Perimeter run, inside run, perimeter run, inside run, RPO, play action deep shot. That's kind of the recipe, I think. I cannot imagine Alabama's going to be trying to carve them up, work in the middle of the field with some of the things that Oklahoma can do from a turnover standpoint. So I think the only way Oklahoma wins this game is by turning it over. I think Alabama probably knows that. And as a result, they're not going to take a whole lot of unnecessary risk.
What do you think the ceiling is for this Alabama squad? This year with the collection that they've got, and then maybe moving forward, do you think that? I mean, I think with the nature of college football, it's going to be hard for anyone to be as dominant as Alabama was previously. But do you feel confident that they're going to continue to be the top or one of the top programs?
I do. I do feel pretty confident in their ability to continue to do what they've done this year. In particular, I think they can win the national championship. Yeah, I do think that the playoffs are going to be interesting. It's a little bit of this is a bit of a trial period. I don't know what wins in the playoffs over a 3 or 4 games span. And frankly, looking at the rest of college football, I am continuously underwhelmed by the top of the sport pulling away. Like it's not like this year I look at the teams at the top and I think, oh man, that's a flawless football team. It's not like 2019 LSU, or 2020 Bama, or 2021 Georgia, or 2022 Georgia. Like all the teams at the top, I'd say 1 through 12, everyone that's in the hunt right now has flaws. And that includes an Oregon team that is currently undefeated. Because I think Oregon, if they can't manufacture big plays, I think they can get a little greedy. I think they can get a little impatient. And I still wonder a little bit about their offensive line if they played against a super dynamic pass rush, because I don't know if they've seen that either. And you can tell me all day long that Ohio State is that. I would respectfully disagree. I think Ohio State's a run stopping group, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially in the Big Ten. So I think Bama can definitely win it, but I think the playoffs is going to be very matchup dependent. Okay, this team matches up well with this team. Like last year, pound for pound, tail of the tape, who you taking, Texas or Washington? Well, I'm taking Texas. Pound for pound, tail of the tape, taking Texas. But when you look at what Texas's weaknesses were against Washington's strengths, it was not that surprising that Washington ended up winning the football game, right? So I think that's going to be interesting as we move into the playoffs, because it could be very matchup dependent. There could be things that a specific team does that makes life very difficult for a specific team. And it's going to be interesting. I'm just really looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out. But I think Bama can definitely win it. It's just going to be dependent on who they're playing against and how good teams are at stacking up quarterback run.
You've been doing an awesome job on the college football playoff ranking shows, and I want to dive into all of that with you. But first,
Oh, you tailgaters, listen up. We are now officially in the premium conference of college football, and you expect a premium product on the field and on the grill. That's why you need Didier Ranch's steak burgers to take your tailgate to the next level. Proudly raised in Oklahoma for over 120 years. Premium beef this good is hard to come by. Go to DidierRanch.com. That's DIDIER ranch.com. Use promo code Oklahoma15 for 15% off your order. Didier Ranch. Tradition plays better and tastes better.
Galloway was joking about the Kurtis Rourke thing, right? That was a joke, right?
I don't know about him. I about lost it. I don't know about y'all. Like, we all played. Like, how can you be a player and say, yep, you know what? I think we ought to sit him. Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
I mean, truly floored when he said because it didn't sound sarcastic, Greg. So I was just sitting there going, wait, hold on. He didn't just say that, but I think he was being
dead serious, Gabe. Like, I really think he believes that that's what they should do, because I think he thinks that even if they lose this weekend, they're still in the playoff. And I respectfully disagree. I don't think that's a guarantee. But man, how can someone that played think that? Like, I just, you know what I mean? It was the closest I've been to cussing on television in my career. It was that close. I was like, are you flipping kidding me? Like, you know what I mean? It would not have been good.
Well, if they do happen to play their quarterback, how do you see that game going? It's a fascinating one. I mean, Indiana clearly doesn't have the roster of Ohio State, but I mean, they've got total buy-in. They've got good momentum. They're coming out of a bye week. I'm guessing, going to just pull out everything against Ohio State.
Have you watched them, Teddy? Like, it's pretty awesome to watch.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not, it's just so sharp. Everything is clean. When I watch their offense, it's just very clean. The operation, the communication, how quickly and how much the meshes and the RPOs are committed to, and he doesn't go early. Like, he trusts his hands. Rourke does. Their receivers, I think, are so much better than people realize. I think the receivers are a real threat to win some one-on-ones on the perimeter. And if they win some one-on-ones, it's going to be tough sledding for Ohio State to kind of keep them contained. The big question is their offensive line is rock solid. I just don't know if they're elite. I think the system helps them. And usually top five matchups, in big boy leagues, it's usually going to come down to line of scrimmage. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Unless you just have some transcendent quarterback and a ridiculous, supporting cast of weapons, offensive and defensive line will play a huge role in a game of this magnitude. So I do worry a little bit about them in the offensive line in this game, even though I'm not overwhelmingly impressed with Ohio State's front defensively. On the other side of the ball, that's where I'm really curious because I think Ohio State's offensive line's got a whole host of issues. They just lost their center, Seth McLaughlin, who is probably their best offensive lineman all season as far as consistency is concerned. He's now out. The guy that was playing left guard has now moved out to left tackle the last couple games. And the guy that filled in for the left guard now is moving into center. So then now on to guard number 3 there at left guard. And I don't know if that's going to be a good matchup for him. And there are a couple guys in the defensive front 7 for Indiana that can make you pay a little bit. Like Mikhail Kamara, number 6, is a handful. I think they're very stout inside. And they play like there's no tomorrow. I mean, they play hard. So I got a lot of respect for them. I think they're going to battle. I don't know if they've seen anything quite like they're going to see this weekend. And it's a different caliber of athlete. It's a similar conversation to what we talked about weeks ago about Navy playing Notre Dame or like Army this weekend playing Notre Dame. Like when you've played a G5 schedule for a vast majority of the year, which is what Indiana has played, they have the 106th strength of schedule. There is not a Power 5 conference team within 12 spots of them in any direction. So they've played a G5 schedule, and I think that can lead to some false confidence. And when they get punched, how will they handle that? I know that you could say they got punched against Michigan State. That's not the same. This is a different breed and a different caliber athlete. So we'll see how they handle it. I think they'll battle, but I do think in the end Ohio State's going to be too much, and I think it'll be a comfortable win for the Buckeyes, and one where you never really feel like Indiana's out of it, but you also never really feel like Indiana's going to win it either. You know the type of game I'm kind of describing.
Yep. Absolutely. That's kind of how I see it going as well. I just think Ohio State has too many weapons offensively. Looking at the SEC, Greg, you've got Texas at 3, you've got Bama at 7, you've got Ole Miss at 9, Georgia at 10, Tennessee 11. What do you think's going to happen in the SEC? Like, who do you think the best team in the SEC is right now?
I mean, I think like pound for pound, I think Texas is the best team. I just don't know if I've seen it enough to feel real good about it. You know what I mean? people will point to the Georgia game, and I think that was a little bit circumstantial. Uh, not because Georgia isn't really good too. I just think Texas's offensive line, I haven't seen them give up pressure like that all year. That's the one game. Like the rest of the games has been all right. So that I think is of concern, that performance. The other thing, I just want Texas to be a little bit more aggressive. Like I want them to use the Florida game plan with regularity. And by the way, like Florida couldn't manufacture any pressure against Texas. None. And they had 7 sacks last week against LSU. You know what I mean? So like why didn't that version of Texas show up against Georgia? Because that version of Texas against Florida, had they shown up against Georgia, that would have been a far different performance and a far different outcome, I think. They were taking shots down the field. They had some catch and runs, and Florida missed a ton of tackles, and it was terrible. But I mean, it was just they had them on their heels the whole game. So I think Texas is the most complete team. But I just haven't seen enough consistency from them against quality competition to feel real emphatic in telling you they're going to win the SEC. You know what I mean? It's just like I wouldn't be shocked if they lost to A&M next week, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they got in the SEC title game if they won that game by 21 points. It's just I feel like the gap for Texas is pretty considerable.
Well, looking at the rest of the playoff, and it's probably too early to get, too bent out of shape over some of the ratings, but because a lot of this stuff's just going to play itself out. But who do you think, whenever the rankings came out Tuesday, what surprised you? Who was maybe too high? Who was too low? Just kind of the breakdown of what you saw.
Well, first of all, I think the whole notion of, oh, this will play itself out, that used to work, and then we had last year. And I know it's a different format. I know it's 12 teams versus 4 teams. It's a different world, and I'm not comparing anything. This is a blank slate this year. I'm not really comparing anything to 23. But that's why I think these rankings matter, because it might not work itself out. You know what I mean? Like that's the concerning thing. So all that being said, I look at just 1 through 12, 1 through 15, if we want to go 1 through 15, and I'm doing it off the top of my head. So help me out if I'm off by a spot or two. 1, Oregon, no problem. Eye test resume. They've gone on the road and beaten Wisconsin. They've beaten Ohio State at their place. I can live with Oregon at 1. I'm not sure there's many people that would push back there. Ohio State 2. I really don't have a problem with it. They've beaten Penn State. They've given Oregon all they want. I think Ohio State's really good. I think they're super talented. I think their best football is probably in front of them. At 3, Texas, they haven't beaten anybody. That's the challenge. Is they've beaten Vanderbilt, and that's about it. Like Colorado State, fine win. Oklahoma, of course, rivalry game. But
I appreciate you at least mentioning Oklahoma, Greg.
I know
Thank
the
you.
audience, will
Thank
lean
you.
into that
Thank
for
you.
sure. But you look at it, I mean, they haven't really beaten anybody that is capable of ramping it up to a championship caliber level. But I get it based on eye test. Like I watch them too, and I'm impressed with them, and I know they got a lot of pros. 4 being Penn State. I am underwhelmed with Penn State. But I also, in order to justify replacing Penn State with somebody, who do I replace them with? Like it's almost by a process of, I can't put Indiana in front of Penn State right now. Indiana, like we've said earlier, has played a G5 schedule. And like last year, I would not have put Liberty in the top 5 because they were undefeated. Like they didn't have a schedule that warranted a higher ranking than where they're at. I'm fine with where Indiana's at, but I can't justify putting them in front of Penn State at the moment. But I look at Penn State, man. I think they're so limited with what they have at wide receiver. I think the tight end's amazing. I think the running game's okay. I think the running game's good. I shouldn't say okay. I think the offensive line's fine. I think their defensive line's great, and the rest of the team is solid. So that's kind of my assessment on them. I'm fine with them being where they're at, but they're probably the product of having played a somewhat manageable schedule. if I'm going to be honest. At 5, Indiana, no problem there. We'll see what they got this week. Like our whole conversation on Tuesday night show about Indiana, it's like, dude, we're a week early. Like, let's have our Indiana discussion next week. We don't know anything about them right now. But guess what? It'd be like talking about Boise State in the preseason back in 2009 before they played Virginia Tech in the opener. Like, let's just see what they got. If they beat Virginia Tech or if they play them close, then we'll discuss. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm at with Indiana. At number 6, who is at 6?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Yes, perfectly good with them. They're legit. Seen them in person. I think their offense is improving, even though last week against Virginia, not great. They were 1 for 12 on third down last week, but Riley Leonard does look more comfortable. And I do think when Mitchell Evans, their tight end, gets a little bit more involved and a little bit healthier coming back from a knee, they're going to be in great shape. I love what they do on defense. They are aggressive, physical. I love their defense. I really do.
The Northern Illinois loss remains the most confusing thing in college football this year.
It doesn't make any sense. And especially seeing how they lost that game, to lose at the line of scrimmage with their personnel on the offensive and defensive line makes no sense. You're 100% right. That loss, it's 2024 in a nutshell. Like, it's just, you're not going to have the guy's attention every week. It's wild. Bama at 7, I'm fine with it because I take that quartet of SEC teams. 7 at Bama, 9 Ole Miss, 10 Georgia, Tennessee 11. Remove Miami for a minute because Miami will resolve itself. There's really no reason to discuss Miami right now because Miami, in order to make the playoff, has to win the ACC. So we're going to have some combination of Miami, Clemson, SMU, whatever order you have them in, it'll resolve itself, right? We're good there on Miami.
I'm with you.
We'll remove them.
Only one team coming out of the ACC.
100%. So remove Miami. As far as the quartet of teams, Bama at 7, Ole Miss at 9, Tennessee at 11, and Georgia right in front of Tennessee. Obviously, Ole Miss beat Georgia. Georgia beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat Bama. Why did the 11 team, why are they 4 spots behind the team that they beat? Well, when you dive in a little bit deeper, Tennessee has 1 win right now against a team above 500. Tennessee's combined record of opponents that they've beaten this year is 29 and 41. Like I said, Bama's 8-2. That's really the only one that's holding up the rest of the world. Now, is it their fault that Kentucky's not good or Mississippi State's not good? Not necessarily, but 29 and 41 is drastic as far as strength of schedule is concerned. Georgia's at 10, right in front of Tennessee. Not only do they have the head-to-head, but Georgia's combined wins, the record of those teams is 40 and 30. So 10 games above 500, whereas Tennessee is 12 games below. Ole Miss is 38 and 32, still pretty good. The win against Georgia, and really an emphatic win against Georgia, makes the most sense. So I'm okay with them being right there. But man, why is Bama 7? Well, then you dive a little bit deeper. Bama not only has a win against South Carolina, I don't think Missouri should be ranked. So remove them. Like, I'm not giving Bama credit for a big win against Missouri right now because I just don't think Missouri's very good. I know Missouri fans get really mad about that. It's just my opinion. It's nothing personal. I'm just underwhelmed when I watch them. Bama, though, their combined record, they've got South Carolina win, they got the Georgia win, and the combined record of the teams they've beaten is 45 and 25. 20 games above 500. So Bama's 20 games above 500, Georgia's 10, Ole Miss is 6, and Tennessee's negative 12. So that, I think, is why they ended up where they ended up. And I understand Tennessee fans' frustration, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault that NC State's not good. It's not their fault that Oklahoma's not good. And it's not their fault that Mississippi State and Kentucky have 2 of the worst records in the SEC, and you had played them both. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles this year. But it's unfortunate for them because I think they're on the outside looking in, and they need help to get in. They need Notre Dame to lose. They need Texas to lose. And even if Texas does lose, they could be jumped by A&M. Tennessee's just in a really unenviable spot.
Last thing, Greg. Do you have a Heisman vote? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I do.
Can you talk about, I don't know the rules on having a Heisman vote and talking about it openly, but we've got a couple weeks left in the season. Let's go with this. Who's on your Heisman radar? Who are like your top three guys right now that you think have a great chance of winning the biggest award in college football?
It's funny. Like my Heisman votes, I've always treated a little bit differently. Um, I quite literally try to apply our mission of awarding that award to the most outstanding player in college football. And like I try to read, and everyone's interpretation of that is different, right? Like some people say, well, that's means it's going to be a quarterback, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. Like I'm not above putting a defensive lineman on my ballot at all if I see the defensive lineman is the best player on the field, right? So the guys that are kind of under consideration, it's pretty obvious to me that Travis Hunter needs to be in the mix with what he does on both sides of the ball. It's amazing. He's a great football player. I think he's a much better receiver than he is defensive back. But he's excellent as a receiver, and I think he's a playmaker. When he's on the field, he makes a lot of plays. So it's understandable that he's the favorite. Ashton Genty's a monster, man. Like I wish more people would be paying attention because I put on Boise, and I don't know if you guys have really spent a lot of time on them. I probably watched 3 or 4 games. I'm not grinding the tape on Boise to prep for their game against Wyoming. But I put on the tape and I'm continuously underwhelmed with what they have in addition to Ashton Genty. Like Ashton Genty's kind of a one-man show a little bit. Like they got good players, but it's kind of all about Genty and what he does. And their offense is going to go as he goes. And I think he's probably a little underrated, as crazy as that may sound. I think Cam Ward's been great this year at Miami. He deserves some consideration. Another guy that I think is way underrated is uh, is Tyler Warren, the tight end at Penn State. He's like pound for pound, just a phenomenal football player. And I don't know why he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. One of the best defensive players I've seen this year. I think Teddy will appreciate this. I always seemingly find a linebacker that be in the mix. And the best guy I've seen up close this year is Chris Paul at Ole Miss. Um, he's been awesome. I mean, really good for Ole Miss this year. Granted, I haven't seen Danny Stutzman. I haven't seen some of the other guys that are playing linebacker in person, but for me, like the best I've seen, he's there. Uh, Gosh, I mean, there's been a handful of defensive linemen, but I don't get it every week, so it's hard for me to put them in the category this year of a guy that's just going to take over the game on a weekly basis. Receivers, there's not really a guy that stands out as a possible go-to outside of Travis Hunter. At quarterback, I know there's other people that have supported Jackson Dart. I'm not sure I'm there because I also think that while Jackson Dart has helped them win games, I also think that Austin Simmons, their backup, let him right down the field against Georgia in a pivotal moment. So I know it's a long answer to a short question, but it's wide open for me.
I like it, man. You're the man. Thanks for joining us. Please make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you really like this, you can show your appreciation down this way with the super thanks. Other than that, we'll see you next time here on In the Weeds.